I want to share with you something today that, as a web publisher, totally blew my mind. So I look back at my Discover traffic, Google Discover traffic, to my website, the Bay Area Telegraph, in 2023 alone, and I got 237,000 clicks from Google Discover. 237,000, and that's on 3.44 million impressions. And this is high quality traffic too. So my RPMs on Mediavine for this traffic are about $30 to $40 per thousand views. So when you think about that, that's almost $10,000 worth of traffic just from Google Discover, just from ads, not even counting, newsletter signups, conversions, and that kind of thing. So pretty amazing traffic source. And I'm going to break down today exactly how I did this, the strategies that I used, and then share with you an exclusive opportunity to build your own Discover traffic. So if you haven't used Google Discover before or seen the power of Google Discover, let me tell you just the basics on it. So Google Discover is a little bit different from traditional Google search. Traditional search, you go to Google, you put in your keywords, your query, or question, and you end up with those classic 10 blue links, the thing we've all gotten used to. Now, Discover is a little bit different. It works mainly on your phone. It's mainly a mobile platform. And if you pull up the Google app on your phone and take a look at the stories that come up, those are the Discover stories. And the difference is that instead of you coming to Google, Google is sending stuff to you based on your interests, and they personalize it to whatever it is you care about, whatever it is you've been searching for recently. Like if you're searching for a vacation, you're going to go to Maui, you put that in, you're going to get Maui stories. If you are wondering why your dog is eating a particular way and you put in their dog's breed, you're going to get more stories about your dog. So they're pushing things to you based on your search patterns, based on your interests, and they're tailoring those stories. They're getting them from big news sources, but also independent blogs. And so that's how my stories are coming up in Google Discover. People are finding stories related to the Bay Area, and Google is shoving those out onto their phone, into their mobile search results, sending the stories to them instead of waiting for them to come and search for something. It's incredibly powerful because you can get, as you can see with the spikes here, thousands and thousands of views on a story. My top one got about 50,000 clicks, 49,577 clicks on a single story from Google Discover in a matter of days. So it's pretty awesome. It's a great platform, but it can be a little bit tricky to understand if you're used to the traditional search. So let me break down some of the things that determine your Discover traffic and stuff you can work on. And this is an infographic that I created along with Jesse Cunningham and Tony Hill. Been working with over the last few months and over the last year to test a lot of these strategies and build up our Discover traffic. So the first thing that you want to take a look at is your site's overall authority. And so what do I mean by that? A couple of things. For one thing, it can't really be a brand new site. So in our testing, we found that sites have to be at least about 6 months old in order to get Discover traffic. That seems to be the cutoff. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Traditional search, Google's showing maybe 10 results. Somebody asked for the content that that they're seeking, and they can look and say, oh, I want that one. I don't want that one. They're kind of the users participating a bit more in that choice. Now, if Google is pushing stuff to you and saying, hey, you should look at this story, they don't want to recommend stuff that's dangerous in any way or that might not be accurate. So they're very safe with Discover. And part of that is they are going to wait. They want data. They want to see that your site is legitimate. And so, brand new sites probably not going to do well. So if you're running a site that's less than a year old and you're not getting Discover traffic, the unfortunate answer for you is you might just have to wait. That's not the case for all sites. A way around that, if you're thinking of starting a new site, is to use an aged domain. That seems to avoid that process of having to wait as long as your site corresponds pretty closely to what that site has been talking about for a long time. So definitely, if you just suddenly one day wake up and you're getting Discover traffic and your site is around 6 to 12 months old, that might be what happened. You just aged into being eligible for it. Another thing is that your site has to have some authority on the topic of the article you're publishing in order for it to get Discover traffic. So as an example, my site is about the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a local news and travel website. And so if I publish a story about the Barbie movie, probably not going to get traffic for that. But if I talk about the Golden Gate Bridge, or I talk about Bay Area food, or even if I talk about travel, it's possible that I'll be able to get Discover traffic. So Google wants you to talk about stuff and write about stuff that you know something about and that you have some history with them of talking about. And again, you can push it a little bit. Like I've written stories that have gone viral on Discover about Southern California and Los Angeles. I cover mainly the Bay Area, but travel, California, it's close enough. They seem to allow it. But if you're covering something totally off base, you're probably not going to get Discover traffic for it. So think about when you're publishing stories, what's going to fit with your niche, or what's going to be a logical extension of your niche. Another thing is you need to meet some basic technical requirements. And this is another one where we see a lot of people end up, in trouble with Discover. One thing that you have to make sure of is that your images at the top of your article are at least 1,200 pixels wide. That's the cutoff for Google Discover. So if it's under 1,200 pixels, you might get in there. We've seen it happen, but it's really important to be over 1,200 pixels. So check your images, make sure that your CMS like WordPress isn't automatically resizing them to be smaller, and if you need to, get a developer involved to make sure that the images are actually being served at 1,200 pixels. So we've seen people upload big images, but WordPress helpfully resizes them to make them smaller, and then they're not big enough to qualify for Discover. Another thing that's important is good EEAT, basically good authority and trust for your site. It's probably not as important a factor at this point, but it is definitely important to make sure that you have basic trust signals there. That you have a brand where there's content in other places. If you get some amount of direct traffic implying that people care about your brand, that certainly seems to help. Not the most important factor, but just again, enhancing that trust. Because if Google's going to send people and say, you better read the story, they want to make sure that the stuff they're sending is legit. They do not want to send a story that's misinformation or inaccurate because they're pushing it to users. So they're a little more responsible for the content versus if they're just showing people a set of options and the person is making that choice. Now, final piece here from the authority side is that you need to have a reasonable amount of ads. So I use Mediavine, and that works fairly well. It's a lot of ads on the site, really. I mean, it's pretty ad dense, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. But I used a different provider, or a different ad company for one of my sites that was getting great Discover traffic, and they started putting these big ads at the top of the page, the very first thing that a user saw. And I got kicked out of Discover on that site, and I honestly haven't been able to get it back in there ever since that. It's a different site, wasn't my main site. So thankfully, it's not a big hit, but it's a reminder that if you try to run ads that are going to ruin the user experience, like putting ads right at the top above the fold, taking up the whole space, Google does not like that, and they are not going to be sending you a lot of Discover traffic. Now, let's talk about, that's sort of more about your site and your domain. Let's talk a little bit about the headline and the photo on your article. And honestly, the contents of the article, it's important, it's good, you want something that's engaging, you want something well written, but it's not nearly as important as the headline and the photo. Those are really the things that are going to drive your Discover traffic, because when you look at a story in Google Discover, all you're really seeing is the headline and the image on there, right? So that's what users are seeing, and they're going to decide whether to click or not based on that, and Google's going to decide whether to show it to more people based on how many people click on it. So you need a compelling photo, you need a great headline. And so the headline should be a little bit emotional, ideally. It should be a little bit compelling and engaging, and it should create some kind of curiosity, some kind of information gap. It doesn't have to be clickbaity, and it shouldn't be clickbaity, but it should open up a question that the user has to click through to resolve, or it should open up a feeling that the user has to click through to resolve. Maybe it's anger, maybe they're upset, maybe a price went up, and you're saying, you won't believe how much this price went up on this item. They want to go and they want to see, well, how much did it go up, and why did it go up? Maybe you want to show some food in your area if you're a local travel blogger or a local food blogger, and say, you won't believe how amazing these dumplings are. And they want to say, just click through and see, okay, where do I get them? A recipe blogger might share some photos that are just beautiful and make people hungry and they make them want to go and click through. A parenting blogger might show a beautifully organized playroom where somebody says, I want my life to be like that, and they click through. So there has to be some emotional, grabby component to the headline and the article image itself. Now, the best person in the world at doing this is Tony Hill, and he coached me on how to do this for my site, and now I'm working with him on a program that you should definitely check out. It's me and Tony and Jesse Cunningham, and we actually have been, again, testing these strategies and developed a course where we're sharing. It's a mini course, and there's a community built around it where we are sharing some of the strategies here and some exclusive strategies that we discovered that add on to what you're seeing here. And that is at getigniteyourtraffic.com. And one of the things that I think is coolest in that is that Tony goes into so much detail on how to write the headlines that convert and that get people clicking. And he showed me how to do this for some of my own articles where I was writing headlines I thought were pretty good, but they didn't convert nearly as well as after he got his hands on them and started changing it up. So check out the course because he's got some awesome videos in there that walk you through exactly how to do this. And then you can also subscribe and add on and connect with us directly through a community and a forum. And you can ask questions, you can get direct feedback. And again, I found that was super valuable. And the stories that Tony helped me write headlines for, when they actually hit on Discover, I earned so much from those, from ads, that it would have easily covered the cost of this course. So I wish it was out there when I was doing that. I had to go to Tony directly and get coached, but you can actually go through and get the benefits of everything I've discovered, everything Tony has discovered, and then Jesse, just an incredible process-oriented person. He's broken it down into an SOP to do this consistently repeatable kind of stuff that you can follow or even hand off to a VA. So go ahead, check that out, getigniteyourtraffic.com. And that's going to be your best bet for writing those compelling headlines. We even made a custom GPT that helps you to do it. But you can also experiment. Find out what works for your niche. Again, focus on emotion, focus on curiosity, focus on something that's really going to stop that scroll, a compelling, interesting image. I'll give you one example here from my own site. This is an article that did really well in Discover. It got about 10,000 clicks. And you can see, say goodbye forever to BART's iconic train cars. That's emotional. If you live in the Bay Area, this is the transit system. People are like, wait, what? BART's going away, the cars are going away, goodbye forever. That's kind of got that emotional component. It's got this beautiful sunset photo of the BART train. And that's, kind of saying like, oh, it's going away. So people click and they want to know what that's about. Again, compelling photo, emotional and compelling headline. Again, those are the most important things. A couple other things, though, to keep in mind in terms of the headline and the photo. Make sure that your article and your topic are fully safe for work. So, usually on Google, they're a little bit more permissive. You don't want to show anything inappropriate, but they'll kind of let you get away with a little bit more. And that is not the case on Discover. And I'll give you an example. I published some articles about swimming pools, some articles about totally mundane food things. They did great. I was getting all this Discover traffic. I was like, yes, this is fantastic. It's going to keep going on forever. And then I published a story about a toilet. And it wasn't even an inappropriate story. It was about an astronaut toilet on display at a museum in the Bay Area. Totally innocent. But Google stopped sending me Discover traffic for about 3 weeks after I published that story. It was like instant. They shut it off. And I think it was because I published this thing that, toilets, like, it's a little bit edgy, a little bit out, like they weren't sure exactly what I was getting at. And so they said, better play it safe, and just kicked me out for a while. And finally I got back in using some strategies that we cover in the course for if you ever get kicked out of Discover yourself. But thankfully I got back in. But just, that's a reminder, don't publish stuff that's at all edgy for Discover. It's just not worth it. And it needs to be fully safe for work. And then the final piece is, if you can find a newsworthy topic, then that's great too. And it doesn't have to be straight up news. In fact, usually it shouldn't be straight up news, like, this thing happened in the community. That doesn't tend to get Discover traffic. But if you can tie it into something that's happening in the news, then that's a great way to get additional traffic. So, if there's something happening in your niche, a big event, a conference, something like that, and you can share a related topic to that and piggyback on the newsworthiness, that can help. Also, a great way to do this is holidays. So create content that's customized around a specific upcoming holiday, a big event that's happening, that kind of thing. If people are already talking about it, there's already news stories about it, and you can somehow tie into that, that's a great way to approach it and a great way to boost Discover traffic, because Google loves to show anything that's timely for Discover. It's these little bursts of traffic, well, big bursts over a little amount of time. And so if it ties into current events, that's a great way to approach it. So I'll look at, for example, something like this BART story that I shared is a great example of this happened in the Bay Area. It was timely. The cars were being retired. And so it was a great moment to jump in with this story. Not straight up news, not like an election result or anything like that, but tied into a breaking news thing that was happening in the Bay Area, and again got a lot of traffic for me. So that's the basics of the headline and the photo and some of the things to consider for the story itself. So we covered the site, we covered the article, and then this is where it gets really interesting. So Google Discover also seems to look at traffic coming from other places, and that's the social traffic component here. So if you can post your article to social networks, or you can send it out to your own newsletter where you have people built up, and Google sees that there's a targeted audience that cares about that story already coming to it, they are much more likely to promote that story on Discover. And that's a little different than traditional Google search, where it's mostly about links, it's mostly about, the content of the page itself. Here, they do seem to be looking very closely at what other sites are sending traffic to this article. So if you can post it to your social channels, if you can post it to your own newsletter and get that direct traffic, anything that gets that viral kind of generator going, then Google's going to jump on that with Discover and keep it going. And I like to say that social traffic, social engagement on Discover is like links are for traditional search. It's something that Google's not going to acknowledge. They're always going to say, oh, it's all about the story. It's all about the importance of the writing, all of that. What we've found is that actually that component of external traffic from somewhere else validating to them that, hey, this story is viral, it's important, that seems to really kickstart things almost as strongly as links still, always, forever kickstart traditional SEO. So think about where you can send some external traffic to your article. And again, we have some specific strategies in the course that tie into the exact way to do this from different social networks. So jump in there. And again, if you join the community, we can kind of weigh in, because everybody's channels are different. Everybody's audiences are different. So we've had pretty good success of customizing it to individual people and their niches. And then that gets to the final piece here, which is the Discover switch is on. And this one is pretty nebulous, but again, this is where I think we've made the most progress over the last year in our testing. And this is where it's really frustrating to a lot of webmasters, because look at the traffic here from Discover. It's like big spikes and then nothing, and then big spikes and then nothing. And sometimes that can be really frustrating, because you get this big boost of traffic, you're making tons of money. I mean, I've made $400, $500 a day on some of these stories from Mediavine when they've really taken off. And then you're like, oh, this is amazing. This is my new traffic source. This is how I'm gonna do great this year and meet my goals. And then it just goes away, and it just seems random. Like, why did that happen? Or you're in it, it's going along perfectly, and then boom, you're out of it for like a month. Or more, or you just can't figure out how to get back in. So that's the switch that we talk about. And Google's even acknowledged this, that it can be like we're doing it or we're not doing it. So how do you get them to do it? How do you get them to send that traffic along? And that's the thing that we put the most effort into. Well, not the most effort. Honestly, all of this was the most effort. But that's the thing where I think we've made the most interesting discoveries about what's worked for us in our testing across multiple sites. And we found some strategies that seem to flip that switch fairly reliably, at least for us. So again, check out the course. All of these things will get you there if you apply them to your own site. They'll get you more traffic. But if you want to delve into those specific ways we found to kind of flip that switch and keep that switch on, Or if you want to dive into this in a ton more detail or do it in a community with other people who can give you feedback and keep you accountable, head on over, getigniteyourtraffic.com, join up with me and Jesse and Tony, see what we have to share, see if you like it. We do have a 7-day refund policy, so there's no risk there. You just dive in, try it out. You probably want to try it for a bit longer than that to validate it for yourself, but I think you're going to learn a lot from it. I learned a lot from watching what they put together, my colleagues over there. So try these strategies out, see how they do for you on your own in the wild, and then when you're ready to really level it up, come work with us. We'd love to have you.